The contents of this video should not be replicated for unethical use cases. This is strictly for educated nerds and people who call themselves security professionals. Hey hackers, Blue Cosmo from CCS here. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about the best malware projects to get you guys started. I know you guys suck at malware, so Daddy Cosmo's here to save you, okay? Anyway, best malware related projects. A little slideshow I put together for you guys. Little synopsis here is that it will provide you some of the good or some of the best malware projects to get you guys started in offensive and malware development. Hopefully it is a good trajectory, a good path to follow, give you guys a good idea of some of the things you can get started with now that will later down the road build your skill set up more and more. So as we continue, you guys can learn a quick little who am I. If you guys haven't heard of me before, my name is Cosmo. Hi, nice to meet you. That's me right here. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Cosmodium Cybersecurity. It is a offensive development group who does a lot of cybersecurity education, research, and development. You guys can check out our website, YouTube, and GitHub. You guys are probably already watching this on YouTube, so you don't really need to check out the YouTube. But you should definitely subscribe because we have a lot of good content here now and coming on the way as well. So definitely something, if you guys are interested in offensive security, malware development, that area of hacking, this is definitely a quality resource to check out. Anyways, let's go ahead and actually get started. Now, I already know off the bat, you guys are going to be asking, what languages should I learn to work on these projects? Don't worry, we've already covered that in an entire video right here. This slideshow will be linked in the description along with any of the resources that it is going to be connected to. So don't worry too much about that. So we'll start with the basic projects right off the get-go, right? The focus of this section should be really getting yourself familiar with the language. The actual quality or type of projects you work on isn't super relevant or important at this time. Just get used to developing with the language, developing code itself. You're also going to be learning how to work with different libraries, different functions that the code provides for you, how to move files, etc. It will also teach you how to build up something called ingenuity. If you don't know what ingenuity is, it's like your ability to creatively think and creatively solve problems, right? Because when you develop code, you're going to run into so many errors. You're going to have so many bugs. So you guys want to be able to problem solve, right? You don't want to have to go to a Discord every time, ping everyone and be like, yo, my code ain't working, help me out. But instead, you want to be able to Google your errors and figure out what the issues could be. Was it a syntax error? Was it a logical error? Is it a runtime error? It could be any of these things. And you want to be able to figure out what those are. So here are some project ideas to kind of get you guys started in that space. Text-based games are an easy one, right? You guys can have easy text-based input and it can do something. You can be like a quiz, a survey, or like a trivia game. It could be rock, paper, scissors from like an ASCII art perspective. A text-based adventure game. It could be any of the stuff. And even though this doesn't seem relevant now, these are important things to do early on because it will help you with the basics of the language. And honestly, if you guys are profound, if you guys are like a C god, then you know what, go for it. Just, you can skip this whole section. But I feel like if you guys are new, this is something that could really help you guys out. It helped me out a lot as well. And I think it's one of the skill sets that I got early on that allowed me to become a lot more proficient in this industry than I would have been otherwise. Another game or another project you guys can work on is something like a web scraper. It will teach you how to work with web requests, pulling down data, reading data, parsing data. It's a really good project. I definitely suggest checking it out. The entire project of the Mark 14 supervision is basically this hacker map of open data that we built. And web scraping is like the #1 process that we've done to build something like this, to access traffic cameras, that see buses in live time, track down where airplanes are in real time. And it all starts from a project as simple as web scraping. So these projects are important. I'm not just giving you guys these as some bullshit. This is actually something that can help you down in the long run. Something like a password manager and generator could also be something good, like working with a database to use random values to generate passwords, save them, and have them be associated with different accounts and such like that. It can be something very simple, and even working with something like encryption too to encrypt the passwords are all different things that will help you down in the long run. Encryption will help you so much with tactics like obfuscation, for example, to avoid antivirus with your malware as you start to develop it, or even things like ransomware if you shouldn't be developing ransomware in an offensive development space. So that's stage 0, right? Let's move on to stage 1, and that is going to start talking about the different protocols and APIs you guys should start looking into once you guys get proficient in these languages. So the focus of this section is to actually start getting familiar with networking, IP address, protocols, etc. You don't need to be a networking god. You don't have to like binge network chuck every day and understand the entire, stack. And actually, I would understand the stack a little bit, but you don't need to overdo it. Just have a profound understanding of general networking, how computers talk to each other, the differences in public and private IP addresses, how networks work from a general perspective are all important things to kind of understand, because you can make the most incredible malware in the world. This malware can like avoid antivirus. It's like polymorphic. It's hopping all over the place. It's changing its own hash. It's all this stuff. And if it can't reach back to you and send you all the goods, then what's the point, right? Because it would be pointless if you couldn't network and have the malware send you all the loot back, if that makes sense. Also learning how to interact with different APIs, both on a systems perspective and on a web perspective, right? When I say systems, I'm talking about like the Windows API. You're going to need to learn the Windows API if you want to get into offensive security. It's very simple. A lot of people overthink it, thinking it's very intimidating. I do have a video right there that will teach you the Windows API in the most simple way possible. It's like an hour long. So here are some protocols I would definitely suggest you guys start looking into at this stage. Understanding what TCP is, what it's used for, generally understanding how it works. You don't understand from like a deep perspective, but have an understanding of how to use it, how to work with it. Same thing with UDP. This is the differences between TCP and UDP are going to be important to understand. SSH is something you guys should practice working with, because it will give you guys an idea of actually remotely accessing a device. SSH is used to remotely have a shell on a device, which is something you guys are going to be working with a lot in offensive security. Same thing goes for SMTP, HTTP, and DNS. These are all different protocols that are very important. So here are some APIs you guys can start looking at. API is an application programming interface, in case you guys didn't know. So things like the Windows API, as I was talking about earlier, even things like the Discord API and Discord webhooks, and other forms of webhooking as well, are all going to be valuable traits. Webhooks are going to allow you to basically make a request to some sort of website, web server, and allow you to automate some sort of action, right? So you can use webhooks to, for example, remotely upload files to Discord, which could be a great exfiltration technique. And we'll talk about exfiltration later in this video. But just know that these are APIs, protocols, webhooks are also going to be super, super critical as we move forward in the area of malware development. So yeah, you guys might be asking like, why these specific protocols? There's a lot of protocols that are pretty potent within this industry, but the reason why I wanted to talk about these ones specifically is because these are very commonly used in the malware development industry for malware processes. So again, you don't need to worry about like mastering any of these. Just be familiar with like the actual process of how to use them. Have a good general understanding of what they are like. And of course, if you guys are lost on any of this, you guys can join our Discord in the link down below, and you guys can just ask us questions there. It's a great community that can help you guys out a lot if you guys are lost in getting the world of malware development. So here are some project ideas regarding this stage. You guys can start making something like a Discord bot. It's a very simple project. It's pretty easy to learn. It's a good way to start learning how to work with an API. You guys can use any language for this, Python, whatever. But learning how to actually interact with the API is going to be important. TCP server and client is going to be super, super important. This will actually start guiding you guys to build reverse shells that will move down towards later. But for now, being able to build a TCP server and client and send data between the devices are going to be a super awesome project for you to learn, and a awesome project that is going to help you in the long run. I can guarantee it. HTTP server has a similar aspect behind it as we guys start building things like C2 servers, or if you're going to use an HTTP protocol for remote access as opposed to something like a TCP protocol, SSH, etc. HTTP is going to help you out a lot as well. SMTP email client is also really cool because it teaches you how to work with another type of protocol like SMTP to send data between computers, right? You guys can send emails over the network, and you guys can start picking things up with this creative thinking of like, hey, if I can send emails, like you can typically send attachments to emails, so can I use something like SMTP to send data off of a computer to my email? Or this is the type of thinking you guys need to start building up, right? When you guys work on these projects, you need to start figuring out how can you use these projects, these protocols, these APIs to your advantage as a developer. That's the key part of malware development. Malware development is no different than software development. The only difference is just that your intentions and creative thinking behind the projects are used with malintent, if that makes sense. I don't even want to say malintent. I think it's more of a creative approach and creative thinking and better, more free perspective on development itself. Now for stage 2. These are the actual malware projects you guys can get started building. Once you guys have a more profound understanding in this other spaces, I think this is a good time to actually start working on some more malware related projects, right? So the focus of the section, right, getting started with writing malicious code. I put that in quotes because you're not going to be building like, you know, some like Cobalt Strike type stuff. You're just going to be building some simple malicious scripts to get you guys in the flow of building malicious scripts, right? These projects should be relatively simple, right? They're going to be a little bit less complex relative to bigger malware projects, but they also should be more complex than the basic ones you have been working on up until this point. This also should inherit that creative thinking that I was talking about earlier, right? All the stuff that I was talking about beforehand about the APIs, the protocols, are stuff that you should start keeping in the back of your head as you move into these projects. Project ideas. Okay, so some of the project ideas I'm going to suggest to you guys include something like a keylogger. If you don't know what a keylogger is, it's a very simple piece of malware, not simple, but relatively simple piece of malware that logs the keystroke events on the computer. So it basically allows you to keep a log of everything the user has typed up until this point, right? So once the malware executes, it's logging passwords they're typing, documents they're typing, whatever is going through the keyboard, you're logging so you can capture it, right? Now, when you guys are working on these projects, don't worry too much about trying to get that data off the computer or over the network to something else, like to your target computer or to your attacker computer. Right now, focus on building the malware. Build the capabilities to log these keystrokes, okay? The same thing goes for things like screen capturing, right? Be able to take a screenshot of your computer through malicious code, and then, be able to keep a, record of them, maybe be able to save them. And again, don't worry too much about getting it off the computer. Right now, focus on building the malicious code itself. You can also try to find a way to maybe potentially, as you guys get more developed in this area, maybe learn how to stream images off of the computer, right? Get a live feed, if you will. But again, that's something that you guys can push to later. Right now, focus on the core fundamentals of building these malicious scripts. And the reason why I'm not teaching you guys like a deep dive on like how to build a keylogger, how to build screen capture, it's because these are the things that you guys need to start teaching yourselves, right? You guys need to start learning, exploring the network and like exploring the internet on how to build these projects. Trust me, it will help you in the long run. Another thing is the webcam capturing, right? This is also a pretty fun project that I enjoyed when I was first starting. Just being able to learn how to work with different hardware devices on the computer and interact with them, something like the webcam. This could be a fun one to work on. Kind of creepy, but I think it's a good one to get started with if you guys are new to the malware space. Also, some sort of credential grabber can be fun, even if it's Wi-Fi, web credentials. If you're grabbing the SAM file off of the Windows computer, it doesn't really matter. Just learn how to start trying to capture these credentials over code rather than like doing it yourself on the computer. Remote exfiltration. This is stage 3. Now, this is the part where we're going to start moving data around, okay? Now, the focus of this is to do malicious processes on the target machine and get the loot sent to us, right? Basically, we want to move data from the target machine to us, the attacker machine, right? Now that we have a keylogger that can log keystrokes, now that we have some sort of screen capture program that can capture screen events, now that we have a webcam program that can take pictures of them through the webcam, we can now have our program send us that information over the wire to our computer. That's the whole point of exfiltration. Exfiltration is the process of actually moving this data from the target to the attacker, right? This is going to be a super critical, important concept within malware. If you guys can't get remote exfil working, generally speaking, that's like the most critical part. Like I talked about this earlier, you can make a powerful malware. If you can't receive the loot from the malware, it is virtually pointless, okay? So let's continue on and talk about, exfiltrating data, right? You guys want to start utilizing these protocols and APIs that we learned about before to actually move these key logs, these webcam images, these screen captures, these looted credentials, all this stuff we want to be able to move from the target machine to our machine. And that is like the exfiltration process. Once you are able to actually conduct remote exfiltration, can see if you can actually find a way to actually upload files to the target machine, right? This is going to be super important because as you start working with something like staged malware, which malware is broken up into parts to avoid antivirus. If you guys drop like one big malware payload, like it's going to throw off a bunch of red flags. But if you have small semi-malicious programs, it throws a lot less red flags and allows the malware process to execute more cleanly, right? Something that is really important is you want to be able to do remote uploads because you want to be able to upload bigger stages programs onto the computer. You want to be able to simultaneously exchange programs. As an extra challenge, see if you guys can get your malware to download files from the internet onto your target, maybe even execute them. This is going to be even more critical part, right? Being able to upload and I guess remotely download files onto the computer, which is virtually the same concept relative to the target computer. Getting files onto that computer is going to be really important, right? Because if you have second stage payloads, as I was talking about earlier, or you guys are trying to, deploy your keylogger and deploy your screen capture and deploy all this other stuff, once you have this remote exfiltration capability, you might want to upload bigger parts of malware. Maybe you want to upload a test ransomware. Actually, don't upload ransomware. Ransomware is not cool. Ransomware is for skids. All right, we are now on stage 4, and we're talking about remote shells. Remote shells are going to be super, super critical. The focus of this section is now that we are able to remotely upload and download files between computers, right, over the wire, over code, and rather than just doing it ourselves, like our programs can upload and download these files. Using the previous protocols I mentioned, the APIs, see how you can remotely access or execute code on the computer. Now, I have two things to say about this, right? One, you want to be able to remotely access the computer in some manner or fashion, generally when you build some of these projects up, right? Obviously, not every malware has remote access to the computer. Some are just simple ransomwares. Some are just some simple worms that spread. Some are some other form of malware. But generally speaking, as from an offensive development perspective, remote connectivity is something really important. And you guys want to actually start building scripts that allow you to have remote connectivity. Now, the reason why I put remote code execution in brackets is because you don't necessarily need to have a remote shell to have remote connectivity. For example, if you guys utilize something called the Discord API, you guys can actually just send commands over the network, have the code execute the command and return the output back to you, and rather than having like an actual remote shell. And it's interesting because you don't necessarily need to have a remote shell like the traditional shell. You guys can have code be executed, output returned back to you through remote exfiltration and upload, right? So this is something you guys can explore. Obviously, I still advise for you guys to start playing around with actually building remote shells, but this is a alternative exploration that you guys can poke at as well. So here are some project ideas you guys can take a look at. So something obviously like the reverse shell. I think this is a pretty common one. If you guys have been in the hacking scene for a little bit, you guys are probably already familiar with the reverse shell. But many aren't familiar with the bind shell, so I would also advise you guys to start exploring a bind shell as well and get an idea of the differences between the two, the preferences of why reverse shells are used over bind shells, but to know that this is a thing and why they exist. Also, some other form of remote connection via the protocols, whether it's HTTP, SSH, TCP, DNS. You can have remote connectivity over DNS. People might not know that, but you can. And some other form of stuff. This is a really cool exploration practice for you guys because it allows you to not only learn more about the protocols, but learn how to use them for remote connectivity. And I encourage you, if you find difficulties with some of the protocols, see if you can make them work. For example, SSH is the secure shell protocol. You need to have user credentials to use SSH, or at least some sort of SSH key to remotely access some device. If your malware can't grab credentials off the computer to use, it may not be the most effective. However, depending on your target, if it is a non-industrial area, you guys can create users through your malware, have them be hidden through the registry, and then use that user to remotely access the computer. So you guys need to start like exploring, thinking creatively, right? Making some protocols work in a better fashion. Think creatively and actually start to practice and put these things into fruition. Outside of the protocols, working with APIs as well can be really helpful for you to work in the area of remote connectivity. All right, now we are on stage 5. Clap, you made it this far. Good job, good job. I'm happy for you, I'm proud of you. All right, persistence and obfuscation. So these sound like some funny words that you guys may actually not know. So let me explain these real quick. So persistence is the ability to maintain access on a computer. What if you may have a SSH connection from one computer to another computer? Now, if you leave this network, how can you ensure that you can always reach back to that computer? Or if the computer turns off, like the target computer turns off and it turns back on again, can you ensure that you can still access that computer? Did the port stay open or did it close? So these are the things you guys want to consider, right? Once you guys are actually building remote connectivity tools, how can you make sure that you can keep their remote connectivity? You can have task scheduling, registry starting, the startup directory, all this other stuff can be used for persistence. And I encourage you guys to start exploring creative methods to keep your code running. And as you guys work on this stuff, I would highly encourage you to reach out to me on Discord. Again, it's linked in the description. And I would love to see the progress you guys are making, whatever creative approaches you guys are taking. And yeah, I would love to see your guys' progress. Obfuscation, on the other hand, is a tactic that is used to hide malicious code from antivirus and make it more difficult for malware analysts to understand what some sort of program is doing. So it basically allows code that is obviously malicious to be less obviously malicious and look more random, more natural on the operating system. That said, the focus of this section is to actually be able to always access those target machines, right, through persistence, right? You want to ensure that you can, for the most part, always maintain that access on the machine. You guys may have heard the 5 steps to a hack, right? Reconnaissance, scanning, enumeration, gaining access, and maintaining access, right? So maintaining access is that like 5th step. Sometimes people merge scanning and enumeration, say the last one is removing your tracks. It varies in the industry, but generally speaking, those are the steps that typically you should follow as a hacker. But within the term or within the space of malware development, being able to maintain that access is critical. Learning how to forward traffic outside of a network if need be, right? If you're using something like HTTP, you may not need to worry about this as much, especially if you have some sort of VPS, virtual private server. It's like a server that's just sitting out there on the internet, right? If you're having traffic already being forwarded out the internet, then you're good. But if you are having connections that are... Okay, sorry about that. Technical difficulties. My camera is being weird, but we're back. What were we talking about? Learn to forward traffic outside of networks if need be. Yes, right. So if you have some sort of HTTP server, or like you're using HTTP as your protocol for remote access, for whatever reason. If you're using something like that and you're running it through some sort of virtual private server on the internet, you don't really need to worry about forwarding traffic out the network because it's already being forwarded. Same thing if you're using something like the Discord API. But if you're using something like SSH or TCP, you might need to worry a little bit more about how you get this remote access forwarded out of the network, right? So you guys might want to look into something like SSH routing, or maybe utilizing internet servers for malware. So yeah, there's a lot of cool information about that stuff, but I want you guys to take the time to explore and learn more about how to forward these ports. Even if you don't know what port forwarding is, like that's the type of stuff you guys need to start learning and picking up as well. If there's anything that I have said you don't understand, take the time to build up your ingenuity and Google it. As I was talking about earlier, malware obfuscation, right? A technique to avoid antivirus systems as well as malware analysis, EDR, stuff like that. Now, time for stage 7, basic rat tool. All right, this is like the first big I don't want to say big, but the first large scale project that you guys are going to probably be working on, outside of the basic keyloggers, webcam capture stuff. And I want to say basic and simple because they're not. They are definitely a learning curve, and they have a lot more leading up to it than a traditional project might. However, the in terms of scale, the rat would typically be a little bit bigger sized than these other projects. And if you don't even know what a rat is a remote access tool. It is a malware that can be used to remotely access a computer, upload files to that computer, exfiltrate data off the computer, run payloads on the computer, things like keyloggers, webcam captures, all this other stuff. And you can do it on one or multiple computers, right? Now, the whole point of this is to combine everything you learned and build into one tool. You want to make some sort of malware that's capable of all the features that you have built up until this point. We're going to make a rat. We're going to call it Only Rat because that's the rat I made a while back, and it allows us to remotely access a target computer, right? And not only can we remotely access that computer, but we built in the functionality to remotely upload files to that computer, remotely download files to that computer, and then for a time we had some payloads on Only Rat where you could capture information from the webcam. You can get a screenshot of their desktop and all this other stuff. Building this project will actually give you a gauge into the malware offensive development scene, right? Because now you're building an actual tool that utilizes everything you've learned up till this point. All the things about obfuscation, persistence, remote connectivity, all the payloads that you start building, like the keyloggers, the webcam capturing, the credential logging, all this stuff is going to kind of harness itself into one project, which is going to be your rat. So once you actually finish building your rat, you have it working, it's persistent, all the other stuff, that's the time where I would suggest you start moving on to a little bit more advanced, complex projects. And I know I don't like saying advanced because all this stuff leading up to now has been pretty advanced, especially if you're new. But now we're going to be talking about a lot of intricacy within the malware scene. So again, the focus of this section is to move past the relatively simple malware that we have built up until this point. Now we're going to move on to more advanced tooling within the malware scene. So some project ideas are going to be things like working with shellcode. Whether you are developing shellcode, incorporating shellcode into other projects, shellcode injection, embedding, all this other stuff. Shellcode is a really, really potent thing within the malware industry, I guess, it's the offensive security industry. And it is something that you guys are going to need to pick up as a skill. You don't need to learn how to develop it just yet, but learning how to maybe generate it through something like Metasploit can be pretty beneficial in actually learning how to work with it. It will also teach you about, memory manipulation, right? How to allocate memory, load your shellcode into memory, and execute it. So that's some stuff you guys may want to look into. Outside that, even things like process injection, process hollowing, DLL injection, DLL hijacking, advanced obfuscation techniques, anti-blue team techniques, right? You guys are going to start moving into the big scene of malware, like what we currently are looking at when people are developing malware, analyzing malware. It's a lot of these memory manipulation, executable manipulation type stuff, and is a really cool space. But this is the space of malware where a lot of people start to get lost, and this is a lot more difficult parts of malware, which is why I made this video, kind of giving you guys tools to build off of, right? You guys can start with something as simple as a keylogger, then build your way up to moving the logs off the computer to your computer, and then being able to remove files back onto the computer. And now that you can exchange data between computers, you can start building into remote connectivity. And like you guys see, like how we're building up here, right? We're building almost like a stack up, if you will. Ultimately, this was supposed to provide you with a general roadmap of projects to get started working on and build up your malware offensive development abilities. So thank you guys so much. Make sure to subscribe. If you guys want to support what we are doing, check out cosmodiumcs.com/support. You guys can check out our program where you guys can support us for only $1 a month. You guys get access to exclusive videos, exclusive articles, exclusive content, all this cool stuff. There's a library of knowledge over there of like stuff. Trust me, it's awesome. You guys can check it out. I'll leave a link in the description below. Other than that, I really appreciate your time. Make sure to leave any questions you guys have in the comments or join our Discord in the link down below. Otherwise, I will catch you guys. So stay happy, stay positive, and as always, happy hacking.